Hello, Internet. I want to tell you a little story about one of my chickens because he's pretty cute and I'm very impressed at how much of a survivor he's been, and he's got got a cute little story. So I don't really name my chickens, mostly because I'm bad at names and I would never remember them all, not in a million years. And also because I free range my chickens. So we live on about 7 acres out in the boonies of South Washington State in USA, and they free range. So I let them out of the coop in the morning and they have the whole day while the sun is up to roam wherever they please. Unfortunately, this means that inevitably I also lose some chickens to predators. That's just the natural order. It's sad, but it's a reality, and my best way to combat this right now is I am raising my little puppy, who is Dahlia, who's over in the corner. She might come say hi. Right now, she is only about 9 months old. She's, she can't be free to roam the property, and she's still just a baby, so she's not super up for protecting the whole flock from any predators. So right now she's mostly preventative, but we do still have predators. So the little chick, he doesn't have a name. He probably never will. That's okay. I don't really want to get too attached because he is small and he's also a rooster. So his ending on this farm will either be of natural means or probably by inevitably my own hands, or if I rehome him, but I don't think I'm going to. He is a tenacious, cute little dude. He's got a lot of attitude. He's pretty friendly, in the sense that he's not overtly aggressive, but he doesn't exactly like being handled. I've had some chickens that do like being handled. I've had a lot of chickens who don't like being handled. I find that most birds don't really want to be pet. They're actually at their happiest when you just let chickens be chickens, and they're much less afraid of me, and they're much more comfortable being around me if I don't try and force physical interaction on them. I try and just let them be chickens. So this little chick was hatched out by one of my hens. It was a little funny because it was close to the end of the hatching season, and I thought all of my broody hens had already done their thing, already had their babies, had their clutches, but unexpectedly, one of my fairly young chickens went out and found herself a clutch of eggs and hatched out a cute little, I think it was like a half a dozen little fluffs. Now this mama hen, she was one of the chickens that I affectionately nicknamed the land chickens. They were a group of chickens that I hatched out and raised in my incubator and down in a brooder in the house. I usually like to try and let hens raise their own young, but to get the year off started early, and because I find that if I hatch out babies around like March, February-ish, raise them indoors, by the time the fall comes around, those hens, if I get any hens out of that clutch, are usually laying eggs, and then they are more likely to lay eggs through the winter, whereas most of my adult chickens are ready to go through their molt and take a break for the winter. So this hen was one of my land chickens. I called them my land chickens because when I moved them up to the coop, they had no mother to show them how to get up onto the roosts. So they very cutely would sleep on the ground for weeks. It took them weeks to figure it out. It was very funny. Well, she was pretty young, and I wasn't really sure how good of a mom she would be. I thought she was a little flighty. She wasn't very protective of them. Initially, I try and just let them raise their young. If they lose any babies, that is the natural order. That's Mother Nature being Mother Nature. But I always step in if they're really, really not being able. I always step in if they're really failing at being a mom, if they're really losing some chicks. But I try and give them a day. I always try and give them at least a day or two to see what they're gonna do. I've had some chickens who are extremely successful mothers, and I've had some who are terrible. So I read the situation, I let them do their thing, and then I step in if absolutely necessary. So in this instance, she was not being a very good mom. I did step in, but even after I stepped in and I moved her and her chicks to a safer place, she still lost quite a few. I don't know exactly, obviously, what happened to all of them, but she started with 6 and she ended up with about 2 by the time she was down in her own little brooder close to the house. One of those chicks got an infection on their head. They had a small wound. I believe they got fly strike, and they passed away. And then the hen promptly decided, well, I don't want to raise just one baby, that's not worth it, and she completely abandoned this little chick. So I have this little baby rooster, and I was pretty confident at this point that it was a rooster, and I thought, well, that's ironic, because you know, if you are in the farming world, you know that unfortunately, most boys are not super wanted. Nobody wants an extra rooster. I already have 2 very good established roosters. I don't need any more. All of my extra roosters, they end up in my freezer. And we take really, really good care of them. They have lots of sunshine, happiness, love, good food, lots of foraging, all the bugs they could want. And then they have one bad day on the farm where we thank them for their lives and we send them off, you know, into the universe, and we do our very best to make sure that their life is not wasted. So that's our process on the farm. You've been a very good girl, Dahlia. You've been a very good girl. This is my dog. She's a big puppy, but she is a puppy. Oh, you've been a very good girl. Thank you for not chasing the goats. So I have this little rooster, and he was too small to be outside completely on his own. It was too cold. I was pretty confident that he wasn't going to die of exposure. It wasn't that cold. This was early fall, kind of late summer time period. But I didn't want to. I knew that if I left him in the coop by himself, he would get killed. He would get killed either by a rat or a pest or exposure, getting wet, getting cold, or by one of the other adult chickens or one of the turkeys, who aren't always the nicest to the little babies, which is why it's important to have a mother hen who will protect them. That's why it's important to have a good, protective, broody mom who will kind of keep the whole flock away from her babies. Don't knock over my camera, please, sweet girl. Oh, I love you so much. You're so cute. So I brought the little chick inside, and I set him up his own little, it's basically a tote with food and water. I did my very best, to find other chicks that were for sale. But it's fall time. Nobody's hatching chicks in the fall. It's a ridiculous time to be trying to raise chickens, because you have to keep them inside or heated pretty much all winter. Chicks, I find, really struggle being by themselves. But unfortunately, he was by himself. So he got to hang out with us. He did not like being handled. I would have handled him more if he liked it at all. I did have a little chick a couple of years ago who got injured and kind of went through the same thing, where he couldn't be with other chicks because he was healing. And chickens, once they smell blood, will peck and peck and peck until that injured chicken is dead. So he couldn't be. I had a chick a long time ago who got an injury and had to be raised indoors. And he really liked being handled. He was very friendly. I ended up adopting him out to a really cute family that had kids that wanted to be able to handle their chickens, because I was too attached to that rooster. I couldn't cull him. I just couldn't. Little LC, we called him. He had a name, kind of. Little Chicky is what I called him. So Little LC, because I thought that was funny. ATM machine. Stupid joke. But this little rooster, he hated being held. Every single time I picked him up, he would scream bloody murder. Oh my goodness gracious. So he kind of just got to hang out with us. He got to watch us bustle around. He got to see everything that was going on. But for the most part, he just hung out in his coat, and I was kind of just waiting for him to grow up a little bit more. He had room to run around. I wish he had more room, but it was the best that we could do in a kind of a tricky situation. It wasn't super worth it to set up the entire brooder setup just for one chicken. And he was a rooster, so I felt like I was doing a lot for him. Some people would have done more. A lot of people would have done a lot less. A lot of people would have just culled him. But I couldn't bring myself to kill a little baby bird. That just doesn't seem okay unless they're like significantly injured or in pain. So eventually, the little chickie grew up, and I was able to put him outside. He was very excited to be back in the coop with the rest of the chickens. He did only one time did he run back down to the house as if to say, I don't want to do this anymore, it's scary up there. But for the most part, he took to the coop really, really well. I always like to introduce new birds to my flock at night. If you put them in there at night, the chickens wake up and they think, oh, this bird's always been here, he's fine, and they integrate a lot nicer. There's definitely still some pecking order that needs to be established, but for the most part, they all get along much better if the new bird is introduced at night. So I put him up in the coop at night and let them all out in the morning, and he went right to it. He was running around, he was keeping up. He quickly realized that my established roosters are very, very nice roosters, especially to the babies. They're very gentle with the babies. I'm always impressed by how nice they are. And he mostly hung out with them because it's actually the hens who are the nastiest to the little babies who aren't their babies. It's very funny. So he hung out with the roosters for the most part. I got a little pecked on by the turkey Tom. He can be a little ornery. He's bigger than everybody, and gosh darn does he know it, but he's still pretty friendly as far as turkeys go, so we'll keep him around for a while yet. The little baby so the little baby rooster, he is integrated with the flock. He is doing pretty good. He's living out his life now. He's keeping up with everybody. He doesn't get pecked on as much. He's still definitely the bottom of the hierarchy list, but that's okay. And I'm gonna give him the very best life that I can while he's with us. The reality is I'm aware that because he is the youngest and the smallest and oftentimes the slowest, in terms of risk of getting attacked by a predator, he's pretty high up there. And even if he does make it to adulthood, the other reality is that once he starts crowing and trying to find his place higher up in the flock, unfortunately, I will either have to find a different home for him or thank him for his life and his time with us and put him in the freezer. I'm not entirely... This isn't something that makes me incredibly sad. I am heavy-hearted when it comes to these days, but I think that you're supposed to be. I think it should be hard. It should be hard to take a life. But I'm also a conscientious meat eater, and I think that if I'm going to consume meat products and animal products, I should be conscientious and aware of where they come from, and I find it very meaningful that I am able to thank them for their life right from the source. So I know what kind of life they had. I know what they were fed. I know how they were treated. I know what living conditions they were kept in. I feel very strongly that all of my animals are very happy and healthy. I believe that if we are going to ask them to give to us, we should be willing to give to them as well, as much as we can. And we should say thank you and have respect for their life, their energy. So that's that. That's my little Rooster. He's a cute little dude. I thought he just had an interesting story. It was very funny. He was hanging out. I wish I had more video footage of it, but for the most part, except for feeding him and giving him water, we all kind of forgot he was there. And then other people would come and visit, and they would be like, "What's in that tote?" And we'd be like, "Oh, this is a whole chicken right here, just inside of our house that I mostly forgot about." But he's a very, very funny little dude. He's very handsome. He's very pretty. I'm excited to see what he looks like as he grows up. Roosters are always so beautiful, which is hilarious and so unfair in so many ways. I wish it was easier to keep more of them around. I've tried in the past to keep more roosters around, and it always ends bloody. So don't do that anymore. But I've got much more strict rooster protocol that I stick to, despite whatever my heart says. Unfortunately, Mother Nature is as kind as she is cruel, and you have to have respect for that. So I have a lot of respect for his life, his energy, his potentiality, and his origin, and I just thought I wanted to share it with all of you. So I hope you enjoyed that story, Internet. I hope you enjoyed that story, Internet. Looking forward to tell you more in the future. Thanks. Bye.